Let's walk through the DroneBlocks code to create our snake mission. So we'll start off with a takeoff block, and then we're going to create three variables. The first one we'll call forward underscore distance. The second one we'll call side underscore distance. These will be the legs of the snake pattern. Forward will fly us forward, side will fly left or right. And then finally, we're going to create a loop count variable. This is what we'll use to base our logic from. The next thing we want to do is we want to initialize these variables. So I'll drag them out. I'm going to go ahead and cheat here and duplicate. It's a nice little tip if you want to quickly duplicate blocks. Now we'll set this to side distance and loop count. So for the forward distance and the side distance, we'll just use 20 inches. And I made these separate variables so that when you're running your mission, you can test by maybe increasing the forward distance and changing the side distance, making those different. And lastly, we're going to set our loop count to 0. Now we'll drag out a loop block. We want to loop 4 times, which will allow us to fly the snake pattern. We'll fly forward, and then what we'll do next is we're going to tap into our logic block. So I'll drag an if block out here. You'll notice the settings icon, and this will allow me to add else logic. I will drag the else, connect it to the if. You can see it shows up here. I'll tap to close. And what we want to do is we want to use the loop count. So I'm going to drag this block out from the math, and that will allow us to determine whether or not the loop count is even. So if you look through this block code, we're setting loop count to 0. For the first loop, it will be 0, and it will execute this part of the code. And in this case, I want to fly right. Otherwise, we want to fly left. So that's our logic. Now, one thing is, as this loops through, you can see that loop count is always going to be 0. It's not being changed. So what we need to do underneath this if-else logic is take our variable, loop count, and we want to increment it. So we will drag out a math block. We're going to set loop count to its current value plus 1. So you can see here that for each iteration of this loop, first it will be 0, comes down here, we'll execute the fly right block. It'll bypass the else. Now it'll be incremented to 1. And when it goes back through the loop count is no longer even. It will fly left. So this loop will continue for 4 times, which creates our snake pattern. And finally, we want to fly back home. So in this case, we will yaw right, 180 degrees to turn around. We'll fly forward and land. That should get us near the takeoff location. Now that we've created these variables, let's make use of them. So we want to fly forward, the forward distance, and then for our fly right and fly left blocks, we want to use the side distance variable. That just makes it easy to maintain. We only have to change the value here if we want to update our mission. And lastly, here's a fun little bit of math. So we've looped through 4 times, and each time this is flying forward 20 inches. So 4 times 20 is 80 inches. By the end of this mission, Tello will have flown forward 80 inches. We could just enter 80 here, but if we were to change this distance, then we would have to update this again. So just a little tip, and we'll take this loop count, drop it in here. We're going to multiply it by the forward distance variable. Let me just explain that. So we're flying forward, loop count, which after this loop is equal to 4, and we're multiplying it by the forward distance of 20, so that's a total of 80 inches. If we were to change each leg of the snake run to 40, then at the end of this it will have flown forward 160 inches and will come back home that distance. So that's just a neat little tip. Always fun to figure out ways to optimize your code. And that's an overview of using variables, loops, and if-else logic.